I want you to picture two apartments. Same city, same neighborhood, similar rent. The first apartment belongs to someone earning $95,000 per year. Walk inside and you'll find a 75-inch television mounted on the wall. A leather sectional that cost $4,000. A kitchen full of appliances, most still in their original boxes. Closets overflowing with clothes, many with tags still attached. A spare bedroom converted into storage for items that haven't been touched in years. This person checks their bank account with a knot in their stomach. They're 2 missed paychecks away from crisis. The second apartment belongs to someone earning $52,000 per year. Walk inside and you'll notice space, a modest couch, a reasonably sized television, a kitchen with exactly the tools that get used regularly, a closet with clothes that actually get worn. The spare bedroom is actually a bedroom. This person checks their bank account with calm confidence. They have 18 months of expenses saved and invest 20% of every paycheck. Same neighborhood. The person earning almost half as much has nearly 10 times the financial security. This isn't a story about income. It's a story about the hidden relationship between stuff and money that most people never understand. The first person isn't bad with money in any obvious way. They don't gamble. They don't have expensive addictions. They just gradually accumulated a lifestyle that requires every dollar they earn to maintain. The second person discovered something that changed everything. They learned that owning less doesn't mean living worse. It means living deliberately, and deliberate living creates financial margin that most high earners never experience. Today, I'm going to walk you through the minimalist money rules that separate people who always have money from people who never do, regardless of income. These aren't about deprivation. They're about understanding that every object you own has ongoing costs you've probably never calculated. Let me start with a concept that will reframe how you think about every purchase you make for the rest of your life. Everything you own costs money twice. The first cost is obvious. It's the purchase price, the number on the receipt. But there's a second cost that most people completely ignore, and it's often larger than the first. The second cost includes storage, maintenance, mental energy, and opportunity cost. That treadmill you bought requires space in your home. Space costs money, roughly $30 to $50 per square foot annually in most urban areas. A treadmill takes up about 20 square feet when you account for clearance space. That's $600 to $1,000 per year in implicit rent you're paying to store exercise equipment. That probably hangs clothes most days. The second cost also includes maintenance and upkeep. That boat sitting in your driveway needs winterization, cleaning, registration, insurance, and occasional repairs. The industry rule of thumb suggests annual maintenance costs run about 10% of the boat's value. A $30,000 boat costs $3,000 per year just to own, even if you never take it on the water. I am not done yet. The second cost includes mental energy too. Every item you own occupies a small slice of your attention. It needs to be cleaned, organized, maintained, insured, worried about, and eventually disposed of. Researchers from the American Psychological Association have found that visual clutter actually increases cortisol levels and reduces the brain's ability to focus. Your stuff is literally stressing you out in ways you can't consciously perceive. You are paying physical and mental taxes for items sitting in boxes. Nope, not over yet. The second cost includes opportunity cost. Every dollar locked up in possessions is a dollar not invested. That $15,000 home gym equipment setup could have been $15,000 in index funds growing to $50,000 or more over 15 years. You didn't just buy a home gym. You bought a home gym instead of future financial freedom. My experience has given me enough to see how money works for us every day by sitting with people who have years of experience in these fields. The one thing I notice constantly is that people who build wealth fast understand this double cost rule perfectly. When you add up these hidden costs, many possessions cost more to own than they cost to buy. The purchase price is just the entry fee. The ongoing costs continue for as long as you possess the item. Minimalists understand this intuitively. They're not avoiding possessions because they hate nice things. They're avoiding possessions because they've calculated the true cost and decided most things aren't worth it. To actually stop this silent wealth drain, you have to look at the numbers before you swipe your card. This leads to the first rule that minimalists follow religiously. Rule 1. Calculate cost per use before any purchase. Before buying anything, estimate how many times you will realistically use it. Divide the total cost by that number. This gives you the cost per use, which is the only honest measure of value. A $200 jacket worn twice costs $100 per wear. A $400 jacket worn 200 times costs $2 per wear. The expensive jacket is actually cheaper in any meaningful sense. This calculation destroys most impulse purchases immediately. That $300 kitchen gadget you will use twice a year costs $150 per use over the first year. That is an obscenely expensive way to accomplish whatever task it performs. Meanwhile, a $30 tool you use weekly costs less than 60 cents per use over the first year. Cost per use also reveals which purchases are genuinely worthwhile. A $2,000 mattress used every night for 10 years costs about 55 cents per use. That is extraordinary value for something affecting your health and energy every single day. A $1,500 espresso machine used daily for 5 years costs less than $1 per use, likely saving money compared to coffee shop visits. The math cuts through marketing, emotion, and social pressure. It reveals what actually makes financial sense versus what just feels appealing in the moment. But calculating new purchases is only half the battle, because your current environment is likely hiding thousands of dollars in negative value. Rule 2. Apply the replacement test to everything you already own. Walk through your home and look at each item you possess. Ask yourself a simple question. If this item disappeared today, would I spend money to replace it? Be honest. Would you actually go buy another fondue set? Would you replace that bread maker collecting dust in the cabinet? Would you repurchase those clothes you haven't worn in 18 months? For most items, the honest answer is no, you would not replace them. They exist in your life through inertia, not intention. They were impulse purchases, gifts you felt obligated to keep, or remnants of past hobbies and phases you have moved beyond. These items have negative value. They cost you space, mental energy, and maintenance without providing corresponding benefit. Every hour spent organizing, cleaning around, or thinking about items you wouldn't replace is an hour stolen from activities that actually matter. The reason you keep them is a psychological glitch called the sunk cost fallacy. You look at the bread maker and think about the $100 you spent on it 3 years ago. Throwing it away feels like throwing away $100 today, but that money is already gone. Keeping the item does not put the money back in your bank account. It just taxes your current living space and visual energy. If you look at how highly successful investors operate, like Warren Buffett, they never hold on to a failing asset just because they paid a high price for it in the past. They evaluate what it is doing for them today. If a stock is useless today, they cut it. You have to treat your household inventory the exact same way, holding on to. A mistake does not unmake the mistake. It just forces you to live inside of it. Minimalists ruthlessly eliminate items that fail the replacement test. They sell what has value, donate what someone else could use, and discard what serves nobody. The process feels uncomfortable initially and then liberating once complete. The psychological weight of owning things you don't want or need is substantial. Removing that weight creates mental space that is difficult to describe but immediately noticeable. Rooms feel larger. Decisions feel simpler. Cleaning takes half the time. You know where everything is because everything remaining has a purpose. And when everything has a purpose, you stop looking for the next quick fix to buy. But even people who master this test often fall into a completely different trap that destroys their wealth disguised as progress. Rule 3. Never upgrade out of boredom. There is a pattern I see constantly among people who earn good incomes but have nothing to show for it. They upgrade perfectly functional items simply because they are bored with them or because newer versions exist. Their television works perfectly, but the new model has slightly better contrast. Their phone operates flawlessly, but the new release has a marginally improved camera. Their car runs reliably, but the New Year's model has updated styling. Their furniture serves its purpose, but they have grown tired of looking at it. These upgrades feel like improvements. They are actually wealth destruction disguised as progress. It is tied to something called the Diderot effect. You buy a new couch, and suddenly your old rug looks terrible, so you buy a new rug. Then the coffee table looks cheap next to the new rug. One purchase forces a chain reaction of upgrades, until your entire living room is replaced. Minimalists maintain a strict policy. Never replace something that functions properly. The phone that makes calls, sends messages, and runs apps does not need replacement because a newer phone exists. The car that reliably transports you does not need replacement because the neighbor bought something shinier. This policy saves enormous sums over a lifetime. Let's look at the real cost of upgrading your tech. The average American replaces their phone every 2 years, often while the previous phone works perfectly. If you replace a $1,000 phone every 2 years instead of every 4 years, you are not just spending an extra $500 a year. If you invested that money instead, over a 30-year period, that pattern costs you over $40,000 in lost investment opportunity. You did not just buy a slightly better camera. You traded $40,000 of your future freedom for a feature you will stop noticing in 3 weeks. Minimalists escape this trap by defining functional clearly. An item remains functional until it genuinely fails to serve its purpose. Boredom is not failure. Desire for novelty is not failure. The existence of newer alternatives is not failure. Actual mechanical breakdown or genuine inability to perform required tasks is failure. Everything else is just marketing convincing you to solve problems you don't have. This brings us to the systems that companies use against you, and how you have to build your own systems to fight back. Rule 4. Create friction for spending and ease for saving. Human behavior follows the path of least resistance. If spending is easy and saving is difficult, you will spend. If saving is easy and spending is difficult, you will save. The retail and tech industries are not your friends. They spend billions of dollars every year engineering your environment to remove every single ounce of friction. From the buying process process, they invented one-click buying, stored credit card numbers, and targeted ads that follow you around the internet because they know that if you have to pause and think for even 10 seconds, you probably won't buy the item. They want your money before your logical brain can wake up. Minimalists engineer their own environment to make the right choice the easy choice. Spending friction looks like removing stored credit card numbers from online retailers. It means requiring a 24-hour waiting period before any non-essential purchase. It means deleting shopping apps from your phone, unsubscribing from promotional emails, and avoiding stores unless you have a specific intended purchase. When you make these changes, not buying becomes an act of rebellion. You are actively taking your power back from an industry designed to drain your accounts. Saving ease looks like automatic transfers to investment accounts on payday, keeping only small amounts in easily accessible checking accounts, making investment contributions happen before you even see the money, and treating savings like a fixed expense rather than an afterthought. These structural changes matter much more than willpower. Willpower depletes throughout the day. Environment is constant. Someone relying on willpower to avoid impulse purchases will eventually fail when they are tired, stressed, or emotional. Someone who deleted the shopping apps and removed their credit cards simply cannot impulse purchase in that moment. Minimalists do not trust themselves to consistently make good decisions. They design systems that make good decisions automatic. The 24-hour waiting rule alone eliminates roughly 70% of impulse purchases. Most desires for objects fade within a day if not acted upon immediately. But to truly break the spell of consumerism, you have to face the reality of what you already own. Rule 5. Count your possessions regularly. This sounds obsessive until you actually do it. Counting forces awareness. Awareness prevents accumulation. Pick a category. Count how many items you own in that category. Write it down. The numbers often shock people who have never examined their consumption patterns objectively. How many shirts do you honestly own? Most people guess low and discover they have 3 or 4 times what they estimated. How many kitchen gadgets? How many pairs of shoes? How many items are buried in your junk drawer? How many books you will never read again? The count itself changes behavior. Once you know you own 47 shirts, buying another feels different. You are not just adding a shirt. You are bringing your collection to 48. The absurdity becomes visible. Minimalists track key categories over time. They set maximum thresholds, perhaps 30 items of clothing total, perhaps 15 books at any given time, perhaps a one-in, one-out policy where any new purchase requires removing something existing. These constraints prevent lifestyle creep. Without intentional limits, possessions expand to fill available space. With limits, each addition requires a conscious decision about what it is replacing. That friction alone dramatically reduces acquisition. But what happens when you actually want to start something new? Rule 6. Rent or borrow before you buy. Most items people purchase get used intensively for a short period and then rarely afterward. The excitement of newness fades, the initial enthusiasm decreases, the item joins the collection of things owned but seldom touched. Minimalists test this pattern by renting or borrowing before committing. 2. Ownership. Want to get into camping? Rent equipment for the first few trips. Want to try woodworking? Borrow tools from a friend or use a maker space. Want a kayak? Rent several times before purchasing. Let's look at the strict math of that kayak. Buying a decent new kayak, the specific roof rack to transport it, and the safety gear might easily cost $1,200. Storing a 10-foot boat in an apartment might literally be impossible, requiring a $50 monthly storage unit, that is $600 a year just to keep it dry. Renting a kayak for a weekend costs maybe $40. You would have to go kayaking over 40 times just to break even on the initial purchase, completely ignoring the storage fees, the maintenance, and the physical hassle of strapping it to your car every single trip. This approach accomplishes 2 things. First, it reveals whether the enthusiasm is genuine or temporary. Many interests fade after the initial exploration. Better to discover this while renting than after purchasing equipment that collects dust indefinitely. Second, it clarifies exactly what you need. First-time campers often buy too much or buy the wrong things. Renting lets you learn before committing. When you eventually purchase, you buy precisely what is necessary rather than guessing. The buy-first mentality costs people enormously over their lifetimes. Closets and garages across America contain dusty remnants of abandoned hobbies. Ski equipment from the phase when they thought they would ski regularly. Photography gear from when they imagined becoming serious photographers. Music equipment from bands that played exactly 2 shows. Your house becomes a museum of past enthusiasm. Minimalists avoid becoming museums. They test interests before investing. They maintain the flexibility to explore without the burden of ownership, because they understand that one major purchase is rarely just one purchase. Rule 7. Understand the lifestyle multiplier effect. Every possession you own connects to other possessions. A purchase that seems singular actually triggers a cascade of supporting purchases. This is the lifestyle multiplier. Major purchases multiply into ecosystems of related expenses. The true true cost is never just the item itself. Watch how this plays out with a home gym. You don't just buy a $1,000 squat rack and a bench. A home gym requires heavy-duty rubber flooring so you don't destroy your house's foundation. It requires wall mirrors to check your form. It requires storage racks for the weights. Then you realize the garage is too hot in the summer. So you buy a portable air conditioning unit. A $1,000 fitness goal suddenly becomes a $4,000 room renovation. The same applies to a boat. A boat requires a trailer, a hitch-equipped vehicle to pull it, storage fees, maintenance supplies, safety equipment, and appropriate clothing. Minimalists calculate the full ecosystem cost before any major purchase. They know that a $5,000 purchase might actually represent $12,000 when all the multiplier expenses are included. This full accounting often transforms what seemed like a reasonable purchase into something clearly excessive. The multiplier effect also works in reverse. Eliminating one major possession often eliminates an entire category of related expenses. Selling the boat means no more storage fees, insurance, registration, maintenance, or towing costs. The savings extend far beyond the item's value. This directly leads into the biggest trap of modern finance. Rule 8. Define enough before you start earning. Here is something that traps high earners constantly, and financial media like Forbes and the Wall Street Journal report on it every single year. They call it the two-income trap. People earning $200,000 feel just as financially stressed and live just as close to the paycheck edge as people earning $60,000. Why? Because their expectations and expenses expanded alongside their income. They never defined what enough looks like, so they keep purchasing more without ever arriving at satisfaction. Their income increases, so they upgrade their lifestyle. The new lifestyle becomes normal, so they need another income increase to feel progress. This cycle continues indefinitely. Minimalists break this cycle by defining enough before they start earning. They decide in advance what kind of home is sufficient, what kind of car meets their needs, what level of material comfort constitutes genuine satisfaction. Then they earn toward that target rather than constantly moving the goalpost. This might mean deciding that a $350,000 home is enough even if you eventually could afford a $600,000 home. It might mean deciding that a $30,000 car is enough even when your coworkers drive $70,000 vehicles. It might mean deciding that your current wardrobe is enough even as your income could support constant upgrades. Defining enough creates a finish line. Without it, you are running an endless race where lifestyle expansion always outpaces income growth. With it, you reach a point where additional income flows entirely to saving and investing rather than consumption. The person who defined enough at $60,000 of annual spending and then started earning $150,000 builds wealth at an extraordinary rate. The $90,000 difference between income and enough goes directly to financial freedom. Meanwhile, someone earning the same $150,000 but constantly redefining enough upward might save almost nothing. This completely shifts how you measure your success. Rule 9. Measure wealth by optionality, not accumulation. The conventional view measures wealth by what you have: houses, cars, possessions, visible markers of success. Minimalists measure wealth differently. They measure it by what they can choose. Can you leave a job that is destroying your mental health? Can you take 6 months off to handle a family emergency? Can you move to a new city for a relationship? Can you start a business without guaranteed income? Can you retire before 65? Can you say no to opportunities that pay well but compromise your values? These options represent true wealth. They are only available to people who have built substantial margin between their income and expenses. The person earning $200,000 but spending $195,000 has almost no optionality. They are chained to their income requirement. The person earning $80,000 but spending $45,000 has extraordinary optionality. They can absorb disruptions, take risks, and make choices based on preference rather than financial necessity. Minimalists understand that optionality requires liquid resources more than physical possessions. The money tied up in a car you don't need is money that cannot buy your freedom when you need it. The home equity locked in excess house is equity that cannot fund a career transition or an extended sabbatical. This perspective transforms spending decisions. Each purchase is not just exchanging money for an object. It is trading optionality for possession. Is this item worth reducing your ability to make free choices about your life? Sometimes yes, often no. But even with this clarity, accumulation still happens slowly. Life naturally brings things into your home. This leads us to the most effective way to keep your environment clear. Rule 10. Practice cyclical decluttering rather than annual purging. Most people who attempt minimalism do a massive purge during a spring cleaning weekend, feel great for a few weeks, and then gradually accumulate back to their starting point. The purge feels productive. The gradual reaccumulation goes unnoticed. Within 2 years, they are right back where they started. The massive purge creates a rebound effect, similar to crash dieting. You clear out half your closet, feel a void, and immediately go shopping to fill it. Minimalists Minimalists avoid this pattern through cyclical decluttering. Rather than annual massive purges, they perform small regular reviews, weekly glances at incoming items, monthly evaluation of one category, quarterly assessment of overall accumulation trends. This cyclical approach catches accumulation early before it rebuilds to overwhelming levels. Removing 3 items per week is manageable and sustainable. It takes less than 5 minutes. Removing 300 items once per year feels overwhelming and often gets postponed indefinitely because nobody wants to spend their entire Saturday arguing over what to throw away. The cyclical approach also maintains awareness. When you evaluate your possessions regularly, you notice patterns. You see which categories tend to grow. You identify which emotional states trigger acquisition. You recognize which marketing tactics work on you specifically. This awareness enables prevention rather than just treatment. Let me give you a practical implementation of these rules that you can start today. This week, walk through your home with the replacement test in mind. Identify 10 items you would not replace if they disappeared. Sell, donate, or discard those items. Notice how it feels to remove things you do not actually want. This month, implement the 24-hour rule for all non-essential purchases. Track how many purchase desires survive the waiting period versus how many evaporate. The data will reveal how much of your spending is impulsive rather than intentional. This quarter, count your possessions in 3 categories that tend to accumulate for most people. Clothing, kitchen items, and media or entertainment are useful starting points. Set a maximum threshold for each category based on what you actually use this year. Define what enough looks like across major spending categories. What home is sufficient? What transportation is adequate? What wardrobe meets your genuine needs? Write these definitions down. Refer to them when temptation arises to exceed your own standards. Because the ultimate reward isn't just a clean house. It is the virtuous cycle of wealth. The financial transformation from these practices compounds over time. Someone who applies these rules consistently for 5 years accumulates substantially less while saving substantially more. The gap between their lifestyle and their income creates wealth that cannot be built any other way. Here is what nobody tells you about minimalism and money. The relationship goes both ways. Owning less creates more money, but having more money also makes owning less feel natural. When your savings account is robust and your investments are growing, the urge to accumulate diminishes. The psychological need that drives most consumption, the need for security and status, gets satisfied by financial strength rather than physical possessions. You do not need the stuff to feel successful because your bank account already tells you the story you want to hear. People trapped in consumption cycles often cannot explain why they buy so much. The truth is usually that spending temporarily fills an emotional void that financial insecurity creates. Address the insecurity through actual financial strength, and the compulsion to spend often dissolves on its own. This creates a virtuous cycle. Spending less leads to saving more. Saving more creates security. Security reduces the emotional drive to spend. Reduced spending accelerates saving further. Each turn of the cycle reinforces the next. The opposite cycle is equally powerful but destructive. Spending everything creates insecurity. Insecurity drives more spending as temporary emotional relief. More spending deepens insecurity. The cycle continues until some external shock forces a breaking point. The choice between these cycles determines your financial trajectory. More than your income ever could. High earners trapped in the destructive cycle build nothing. Modest earners riding the virtuous cycle build everything. The minimalist rules I have outlined are not about suffering or deprivation. They are about recognizing that most consumption does not actually improve life satisfaction. Research consistently shows that beyond a baseline of security and comfort, additional purchases contribute minimally to your well-being. Yet most people spend as if happiness scales perfectly with spending. Minimalists align their behavior with this research. They spend enough to be comfortable and then redirect the excess toward freedom rather than accumulation. They end up with less stuff and more life. That apartment I described at the beginning, the one belonging to someone earning $52,000 with 18 months of savings, it belongs to someone applying these rules consistently. They did not get there through exceptional income. They got there through exceptional clarity about what actually matters. The other apartment, the one belonging to someone earning $95,000 who is 2 paychecks from crisis. It belongs to someone who never questioned the assumption that more stuff equals a better life. Both lifestyles are available to you regardless of what you currently earn. The choice is simply whether you want to own your possessions or whether you are comfortable with your possessions owning you. The math strongly favors the first option, so does the peace of mind. If you want to continue breaking down the psychology of money and learn how to build reliable passive income, make sure to subscribe to Marcit. We are building a community of everyday earners taking full control of their financial future. Drop a comment below with the one item you are going to apply the replacement test to today, and I will see you in the next one.